or anything. Okay, so I'm just going to read a segment from one of the early chapters.
Matt, we're having, I think you're breaking up a little bit. You might want to turn your video off.
Yeah, get a sense of we're moving on the mood of things. So,
Matt, we're having.
okay, 1 second. Am I breaking out at all?
That sounds a little better.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, just feel free to interrupt me if I start cutting out and it's really difficult to hear.
Great, thank you.
Okay. In the first 48 hours, many chose to run. Where they were headed, they did not know. Instinct carried their feet like the wings of Hermes as they moved with the stillness of a specter in the night, knowing it would be they who found salvation, for there was no other way. Miles later, what did they find? Back in the warehouse, it did not take long for the captives to condemn the chamber of their awakening with much the same caution as cordoning off the site of a nuclear meltdown. No one so much as dared sit near the entrance. Besides, its sour, rotting stench kept them further at bay. Brave volunteers entered to recover the bodies of 22 individuals. They were laid out tenderly in a far corner like flowers plucked from a garden, and visited by a slim few drenched in tears and blessings, praying for the departed smooth transition into the afterlife and an absolution from their suffering and displacement. The warehouse was painted in an endlessly bleak spectrum of grays. The floors were concrete, cold, unsympathetic, and pipes veined up and down the walls. Thin support beams stood every 40 or so feet, with massive halogen lamps hung between them. The captives' only clue to their location resided in the large black code on the wall facing the mouth of their escaped dungeon. It read G005 in dictatorial font, and not a soul present avoided untold periods of gazing up and wondering, what does it mean? There were 6 ways in and out of G005, and not all corridors were the same size. Some were more accommodating for those of higher stature. Others allowed human traffic to flow without congestion. The one thing they all had in common were periodic bathrooms with running water. Hundreds lined the walls waiting for their turn to drink or relieve themselves in tiny bathrooms with tiny sinks and cold steel toilets. From what I hear, there's at least 8 bathrooms. That is, if you're worried about venturing too far off by yourself, explained a woman in line to the man behind her, and he in turn glanced morbidly at the back of the line. When it was their turn, folks took voracious gulps from the sink to coax throats still raw from acidic burns and terror shrieks, and to avoid passing out like the dehydrated who collapsed in the corridors with a thud. Once folks managed to agree to single file lines, they had to contend with personal grievances. A fight broke out between a handful of men in a half bathroom as each accused the one ahead of him of dragging out an already unbearable weight. The faucet was the only victim of the brawl, though. Hoisted off the ground with his heel, one of them sent the metal nozzle ricocheting off the bathroom wall with an alarming clang. A jet of water streamed into the air, dousing a woman using an exposed toilet mere feet away as she screamed while ducking for cover. Their dispute effectively decommissioned the bathroom as it took 3 or 4 people to settle down, each disgruntled individual, as those in line gave up and dispersed to other bathrooms. Etta, come on now. I have someone here for you to meet. George Colvin nudged his sleeping companion. The grandfather of 4 rose achingly from a kneel, squeezing both knees, thinking about getting back into yoga. His eyes rolled with anguish. Etta, I have some good news. This young man claims he can find us some food. Whole lot of it. Groggy in a half-hearted attempt to be polite, the elder poked her head out from under a mylar blanket. Don't fool around, said Henrietta Brown. rubbing the pointed crust from the corners of her eyes to absorb the handsome young man smiling down at her. To whom do I owe the pleasure? Calvin, ma'am. Calvin Murphy. It's nice to meet you. He shook hands. Calvin, well, don't you look spiffy? It looks like you managed to avoid wetting the bed, she observed his impeccably clean jumpsuit with eyebrows raised. Blushing through high yellow cheekbones and wide nose, he smiled with soft brooding eyes and a shapely beard that accentuated his round chin. Just like your husband said, I know where to find us loads of things to eat. Husband? You'd be so lucky, she said, sitting back against the wall with the blanket over her lap. My husband died 2 years ago of a heart attack. Forgive me, that was rude. I'm very sorry for your loss, Calvin bowed his head. You're going to be even more sorry if you don't get to speaking on this food situation, she replied sternly. There's a garden out there, Etta, George exclaimed, full of fruits and vegetables, enough to feed everyone. Calvin winced. The thing is, it's a bit of a trek. No offense, but do y'all think you're up to it? Boy, I'ma knock the fade off your head, Henrietta scoffed. Take Tamir over there with you, she pointed. He's surely strong enough, and it'll be good enough for him to escape for a bit and be around his elders. From the looks of things, none of these children have a parent with them. If you're scared, imagine how they feel. Us grown folks got to make sure they're looked after and safe. And that's all I have for today.
Thanks, Matt. That was
I hope
excellent.
I wasn't cutting out like a lot.
You weren't. The
Okay.
sound was great. Thank you.
Cool.
And yeah, if everyone, I know we're in the silent Zoom. At the end, I'll have everyone unmute and we'll do a big cheer at the end. But if you want to put any love in the chat, that is one of the nice things about Zoom readings is you can comment more directly to folks as they're reading, which is cool. So thank you, Matt. That was great. Thanks for kicking us off too. I appreciate it. Next up, we have Meg Griffiths. Meg is a non-binary writer, educator, and self-proclaimed grill master. She is the author of the forthcoming poetry collection, Hallucinating a Homestead, which will be published October 2021 by Two Sylvias Press. Her work has appeared in the Missouri Review, Black Warrior Review, and many others. A fun fact about Meg, Meg is an amateur gardener growing strawberries for the first time this year, although she has yet to try any of the berries because her dogs always get to them first. A common problem in our backyard as well. Thank you, Meg.
Thanks, Jules. It's nice not to be alone in that either. So I appreciate that. And yeah, thank you, Emily and Jules, for setting this up, and Matt for reading. It's always a pleasure. Okay, so I have 3 poems that I'm going to read. Yeah, so just jump right in. So this first one is called Melania Learns the Difference Between a Myth and a Legend. Once there was a god who spit on the world and taped gold to the bottom of his feet. He became resentful of the mountains, their coded language and refusal to bow. To him, every branch was a switch. He put all the doughs on a treadmill and held their mothers back. The world dreamed of a dinner bell. The butter began carving itself. When the god gave birth, his offspring shot to the stars to play jacks in the seams of their twinkling knuckle bones, learning the slick hands and white eyes of magicians, but also to wait. When daddy couldn't control the seas and a kind of trembling set in, an oracle of forgetting came to wipe the slate for a price unknown to the world. And Genesis collapsed into bed to follow the string of a dream. Once there was a minor deity who wore dissonance and refused the public her teeth. When the moon smirks at her, she recites all the things that don't exist. The inner ear and its ribboned gut, virgin snow, whispers, white lightning struck the house and it began to swallow itself, snake and tail, repetition as scripture, repetition as contract with the audience. A runway of green lights, plausible deniability, a room with more than one fever, a death that won't catch on the furniture. The moon hangs like a daughter in the doorway, locking and unlocking a belt. Once there was a minor deity, when with the world caught in her soft throat, a grit she needed to nurse. When he's most human, he remembers his mother singing him to sleep. Did she know his destiny, the god in her belly, a just add water conqueror, a trickster without secrets. In the beginning, he was a beast, brass mistaken for gold, a pale horse, jumping through halos with a plague between his legs. A creator, if only, of contrails, the legacy of white smoke. Okay. And my next one is When the Doctor Doesn't Believe Your Pain, a meditation. Doctor, always count my fingers, sucking tips like popsicle sticks. Is a spreckle a constellation or a trial run? No matter what you name it, there's no God to be angry with. Doctor, always ask how many spiders I've swallowed during nightly prayers. If I knew, would I be here? They've been multiplying like rabbit holes, as intangible as grief. Even black holes have a horizon radiating. Did they tell you that in school? How bodies collapse like paper dolls, powdered black and blue. I've never felt more like a woman, feeling as little of my body as possible. Doctor always make me practice exhaling through pink straws, but I removed my lungs months ago. Says girly, maybe this is why they haven't called. Doctor, always say you too heavy, eat some celery, go for a jog, to and from my car, my girlfriend, men on the streets, who say heart disease is the #1 killer and I got something to swish to take your pain away. Show me those pearly whites, let me kick them in. Doctor, doctor, I carry bricks like a BMI. He says maybe it's all in your head and gut, this domestic violence. Some never know the daily ritual of chiseling away. Doctor, always interrupting me, sees to it that I bleed, searching through these cavities for blood and breadcrumbs, a string to some earlier trauma. He ain't no cartographer, says, honey, what you been doing to your knees? Doc, my place in line moved so many times I didn't believe I'd get older, until I bled a different topography, and now it's all I can do. All right, and then my last one is called During Quarantine, Ellen DeGeneres Shadow Boxes. The ocean saw you, a fish in the bowl, a body icebound after a man-made lifetime in the cold, with a voice like a morning in San Francisco, fogging over the skyline and the stars' surprise silence. Propeller eyes hoping to disguise the trowel's long arm, driving back real and imagined creatures. Their darkness, an hour in the forefront of a mind. You went inside before you saw questions that floated unnumbered, the ones you would caress as if setting a fire. A telephone rings, off the hook, a freedom easily swallowed when you answer its call every time. When you sparked on a small screen, did they tell you its synonyms or were they already there like a recurring dream? Boob tube, the box, a simmering moral decay, blue-white knuckles gripping a volcano. What did you dare say in the white gown that widows the beholder? The eddies of public opinion flaking off at the bottom of a pool, plastic animals with a gut to wish upon the sky, and the privilege of changing their minds. In flight, you stuck your thumb out, ready to climb on any back that could get to the steep arch of water's throat. And with the world's heaviest tongue, you found the language behind the new world, a hidden message in a bottleneck, frail and ubiquitous. The alert of a single bird arrived with the shape of your beak on the shore, and waves broke the fog. Once the church guided the hands as well as the mind to the Arctic, where icebergs resisted herons and deeper meanings. Unaware of the slow-moving spirits, they built nests thick as shipwrecks that elude definition, because they couldn't stand a silence that outlasted theirs. In the water stood a premonition of a ghost town, an act of God on a platter, a surprise to anyone with a dandelion neck. There was a choice here, quiet as a hairline. Which hand held the bruise of crossed fingers? Rewind. All the piggies' houses are still standing. Fast forward, a soundtrack underlines the squeal of the tape. The sky sparkles with aluminum fists from all the unattended parties, lights raging on in empty rooms, putting all the stars to death. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Meg. So beautiful. Again, if you have any love for Meg in the chat, I know that we would all be cheering after every writer tonight, and I appreciate that as a form also of interacting with people's work. So thank you so much. Up next, we have one of our WITS writers, Ed Edmo. Ed is a Shoshone Bannock poet, playwright, performer, traditional storyteller, tour guide, and lecturer on Northwest tribal culture. He conducts workshops, traditional storytelling performances, dramatic monologues, and lectures on issues such as cultural understanding and awareness, drug and alcohol abuse, and mental health. Ed is a published short story writer, poet, and playwright, and serves as a consultant to the Smithsonian Museum of the American Indian. Ed offers guided tours to the She Who Watches petroglyphs on the Columbia Gorge, as well as to the Warm Springs Indian Reservation in Central Oregon's high desert country. Ed, thank you.
I met Edmo. I can tell you what not to do. Don't send this poem to Reagan. I wrote the day I met Brian Deloria Jr. at Eugene at one of their churches down there. To you, white man, published in 1983, called The Nation Within, published in Hamilton, New Zealand, and they still use it today in schools. To you, white man, in dream sequences of ages past, I saw you coming. I saw you hungry and I fed you. I saw you scared and I comforted you. I saw you tired and I allowed you to rest in my lodge. I saw you greed and sleep and I knew I should have killed you then. I felt sorry for you. I let you sleep. You woke and took all I had. Now I'm waiting for you to get tired again and fall asleep. Surely I should kill you this time. To take away nightmares will be my honor. Indian Education Blues. It's published in New Zealand, 1983, Nation Within. It's at Stone, Oregon State University at the Valley Library, OSU, the college. There's a long little bench to the right of the door. It's in granite. You know what I like about that? You didn't have to die first. As most poets are poetry in granite, all did white guys, not Indians or women. Indian Education Blues. I sit in your crowded classrooms and learn how to read about Dick, Jane, and Spot, but I remember how to get a deer. I remember how to beadwork. I remember how to fish. I remember the stories told by the old, but Spot keeps showing up. My report card is bad. I started a new business venture. This poem is on a fancy, printed on fancy stationery, and I sell them for $25. You can choose the frame to put it in. On the Winslow Ferry, I look out to Puget Sound, see sun reflecting off a wave, wishing to return to days of cedar canoe, Dantilium ceremony, dance by firelight, listen to legends that prophesy a strange new time. The scurry of people caused me to look up. Rushing to my car, I drive into the future. I always try to keep paper with me. Haven't even been to Dairy Queen, be honest. Been to Dairy Queen veterans? Yeah, okay, yeah. 1982, I was coming back from summer camp in Eugene. Me and my daughter stopped at Dairy Queen in Florence, Oregon. All-American Family sat in the summer booth. I grabbed a pen and note writing on the napkin. The pen's running out of ink. They're watching me write about them. Pretty precarious situation. Dairy Queen ritual. All-American Family sits in summer booth. Tall man in jeans, leather boat shoes. Could be escape executive wearing a tray away from his briefcase. Teenage pudgy girl, bubblegum nervous, hides behind large coat. Callous mouth, mother sits her, blonde hair, ironing board stiff. Could have been 1950s cheerleader. The tiredness of TV dinner shows. Somewhere she remembers glass slipper prom. No Donna Reed smile on her worn face. She tries to hold it together for one more time, for one more trip to the vacation time Dairy Queen. People tell me that same family sits in the same booth every summer. And this is the book I'm in with Joy Harjo. When the light of the world was subdued, our songs came through. I put it in the chat. Thank you very much for listening. I'm done. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ed. That was wonderful. Yeah, Alex wants more. Agree. That was lovely, and getting lots of love in the chat. And yeah, if you can put the link in the chat, or one of us can as well. We'd love to link to anyone's work too tonight. Awesome. Next up, we have one of our WITS partner teachers, Charles Sanderson. Charles, I'm sorry I don't have a full bio, but Charles is a teacher in the Woodburn School District at the Wellness, Business, and Sports School. He hosted WITS writer CJ Wiggin this year in his classroom. A fun fact about Charles is that he grew an 11-foot, 8-inch Russian giant sunflower last year, which makes my sunflowers feel very sad in comparison. And its seeds are thriving in many of his friends' gardens. Thanks so much, Charles.
I think before I share my poem, I just want to really celebrate and acknowledge everyone at Literary Arts, and Jules and Emily, especially, for like believing us down in Woodburn and giving us the opportunity. And this year was really remarkable with CJ. They were really, really wonderful with all of my students and gave a lot of my kids who had never seen themselves as having literary worthiness, a sense of not just worthiness, but pride. And so it was a really, really blessed time with CJ in our space. And I think the underlying current that was beautiful was that the two of us are vastly different human beings, and we're vastly different teachers, yet our students could see this real, natural, wonderful affinity and connection and collaboration. And I think that speaks to the power of story and storytellers. And so I'm indebted to CJ for all that you did for my students this year. This is called Without a Price Tag. In a world where everything seems to have a price, or is owned, or is purchased, I struggle to find purchase on my own. Blindly, my feet searched muddy river bottoms, and my eyes these little squares where students or you might just happen to be. So I'll be thankful for all that's free, especially the sky, who still greets me with a smile, no matter how many times I don't even bother to say hello. When I'm lucky, she wraps her arms surrounding me, lending forgotten warmth, letting me know that at least today I'm all right. And when she turns the color of split pea soup gone bad, I know that all I have to do is wait. And goldfinches will once again vie for prime real estate at the feeder. But for now, there are days to be found to live without worry, maybe even shed this mask. I will forget about harvest, let my simple joys echo in these ears, a message in the chat, a brailled letter in the mail, a student's tongue untied once again. Because we're all born to be heard, because we're all born to raise our voices, because those that tried to bury you and me didn't realize that we are seed. I won't knuckle under this pressure. I will let my heart do its job, pushing blood to my extremities as sunflowers push through earth. And finally, I feel like there's at least something I understand. And this simple truth never had a price tag. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charles. It was wonderful to hear, and just beautiful writing. Yeah, it's been a hard year, and I just appreciate you for everything you've done for all these students and for our writers. Thank you. We're gonna have one writer, and then we'll have the break. So for those of you who are thirsty and all of that, we will have a short break after Alex. But first up, we have Alex Baer, who's a writer and editor based in Portland, Oregon. After receiving an MFA in creative writing from Portland State, she's taught fiction and creative nonfiction at Portland high schools through the Writers in the Schools residencies. Her writing has appeared in many online and print publications, including Bitch, Mother, Propeller, Nailed, Salon, and Tin House. Her debut story collection, Planet Grimm, was published in October of 2017 by 7.13 Books. A fun fact about Alex, Alex's son gives her his hand-me-down skater t-shirts, but says, and I quote, "Mom, no one will believe you skate," which I don't know. Seems a little harsh to me, but maybe. Alex.
Thank you. It's really nice to see everybody. So I wanted to say that I take classes too. So I'm going to read 2 poems, and in between there's a little list, I guess you'd call it. So the first poem was at the attic, and basically we all chose a word. So all of us used a word in the poem. So that's I've stolen that idea many times. And this poem is called Month 3. I met a stump. I nestled by its moss. They told me to pour honey on it. I nestled by the stump of Chris's soul, dandruff everywhere, toothpaste stain on the glass container by the Henry Miller porn, the box of his wilderness, the spark plugs and feathers, his ashes still white, still in plastic, still zip tied. If you give attention to the voicemail, it'll kill you 5 ways, maybe 6. Hey, sexy, I love you. You make me laugh. You turn me on. How to fit 6'3" into 2 bags for the lover monster and the sun monster who bicker over an oily Subaru. Where did the penis end up? Do you know a dirty joke? I met a singer and I ate her iron throat. I licked her nodules. I tunneled past her happiness. I scraped out her voice box and I poured my attention into it. I poured the ashes into it. I ladled honey on the ashes and I watched how I ruin every party. And so the second part is I actually drew a triangle. So this is called, I guess it's called a belief workshop taught by Matthew Dickman at the Attic. And so we chose 3 words and used those as inspiration for a poem. So me being me, I didn't do the normal thing like creativity or whatever. These are the 3 words. 1 is the letter C, 1 is the word cement, and 1 is the word coast. So this is a list, and then I'll read the last poem. 1, a therapist said the best my first marriage could be at the end was a C-. We didn't have to believe it's true, but we did. My second husband, Chris, my husband outside the legal state, had morphine laced upon and through his dying lips, fed to him by my first one. 2, C major is a story, but C minor is a song. 3, if David Foster Wallace had coasted down Mount Tabor, maybe he wouldn't have hung himself. 4, look for jewels in cement, leaf ghosts, and hopscotch games whose squares are so small and so endless, they must be chalked by gnomes. Think about all those letter C's in my journal, the initial for the dead one who wrote, so recently in geologic time, I will kiss you in your hurt, the hurt of infertility. 6, piano keys talk to each other, especially the gossipy ones, E and F and B and C, no walls between them. 7, 1,000 bees, leopard skins stretched into rugs, dust under the piano containing our skin, an open air burial for bats up in Connecticut. C is for chaos too. Aim for a grade C poem, average, the barometer. The grief world welcomes me, and if I can get to a C, that's 2 steps up from failure. My therapist says, don't write poems about C, Chris. That's like saying don't breathe, but there's an edge, imperceptible, where we're not inhaling or exhaling. Coast, where we came from, stepping out of the ocean 30 million years ago as prehistoric fish. And this is a poem I wrote called Month 6. They're all drafts, so these are titles in process. But anyway, it's 6 months after my fiance died, thus the name. Once upon a time, my therapist scolded me. She said I'd debased myself, like I'd crawled across the floor and a tampon string was showing. My body shudders every night. The sky blasts a strange yellow. At my mom's wedding, Bessie got drunk. She cried the whole time and fell down the stairs. At the nursing home, with ammonia skin dust, someone stole her bracelet, a snake with ruby eyes. Would I slither across a floor for him, for him? The sky blasts yellow strange. My night body shudders. Lucky stars and gnome songs. Someone's inside pulling out while I grip. Bessie the maid, the hunchbacked virgin, raised green parakeets, Timmy and Toby, but she couldn't swim with dragonflies in Toby Pond. Mrs. Nettleton pressed the buzzer under the rug. People kill the most people, followed by mosquitoes and snakes. They drank gin in separate rooms. Bessie shuffled to ladle peas from a silver platter. Even zooplankton kill for fun. Someone's inside pulling out while I grip. His name rhymes with hiss. I dreamt he had sex with someone at a club. I asked him why. He said, I miss colors. Can I give that gift to the dead? Chartreuse and vermilion and coconut bliss ice cream? 21 packs of cards, an ace of hearts and an ace of spades, stolen on our wedding day, and nail clippers, one for each finger. A mouse skeleton on the china, tiny fur embers, a crack across the Martin guitar. I strum and look at my dad. He calls upon a song with an old gray goose, and my mom makes sure to show me the moon. Thank you very, very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. It was really very beautiful, and yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, in the chat, we already have some reactions, and if you want to, feel free to put anything in there in reaction to Alex's work. I know that one of the things that I'm going to be looking most forward to about being back in a room with all of you is just the sound of a room reacting to a poem, because the silence is hard. Thank you so much. We're going to take a short break. If you want to turn off your cameras, we're going to take about 5. We'll return here at, here's my writer math, 5:43. We'll come back and reconvene, and I'll see you all then. And then after the break, we'll have Jennifer Perrine, CJ Wigan, and Emily Prado. Thank you. Did I say 5:42 or 5:43? Now I can't remember. Welcome back, those of you who are here. We'll take another minute, wait for folks to rejoin.
5:43.
Thanks. I set an alarm a minute early.
If it were me, I would have just kept talking until it was at 5:40 and said, see you at 5:45.
Yeah, I know. You got to stick to those round numbers. It's they're your friend.
Or my math block. Gotten me a long way in life.
I know. Awesome. All right. So nice to see all your faces. We are going to get started again. Pull up my bios. We have some really excellent fun facts coming up, you all. Some that just really blew my mind, and I'm really appreciative to everyone for sharing those. Next up is Jennifer Prine. Jennifer is the author of 4 award-winning books of poetry. Again, The Body is No Machine, In the Human Zoo, and No Confession, No Mass. Their recent short stories and essays appear in Buckman Journal and the Gay and Lesbian Review. Jennifer lives in Portland, Oregon, where they co-host the Incite Queer Writers Read series, which I highly recommend if none of you have attended. It's excellent. And they teach creative writing and anti-oppression practices to youths and adults. To learn more, visit jenniferprine.org. I'll drop that link in the chat. A fun fact about JP, they paid for their last semester of college by going on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which is an incredible fact. Jennifer?
Thanks, Jules. Not the route of financial aid I would recommend to anyone, but you do what you need to do. Thanks everybody who's read. It's been really good to hear your writing and just your voices. I'm going to read 2 poems, and they're both acrostics. I've been writing a ton of acrostics lately, which are just where the first letter of each line, if you read it vertically, spells out a word or a phrase. And so this first poem, it's an acrostic, but it's also a telestic where the last letter of each line spells out another phrase. So it borrows a bunch of lines from a song. So the acrostic reading down the left side is I'm Turning Japanese, if you remember that song. And then on the right side, it's I've Got Your Picture. And then the title comes from the song as well. It's I Can Look at You from Inside as well. And if you've ever eaten sushi before a Portland Arts and Lectures event, you might know where this is set. I can look at you from inside as well. In downtown Portland, before the lecture by the famous novelist, I'm eating sashimi, melting salmon on my tongue, eavesdropping on the party behind me, shouts of Mazel Tov toasted with slugs of sake. New revelers arrive, place boots and stilettos in a neat line under the platform of the zashiki, pile onto their cushions and tatami. I'm delivering rice to my lips, the way a white ex who'd lived in Kyoto taught me. I've come here solo, no friends or partner in tow, as I often do, to take in the scene before an evening event. I'm tucking into some inari when the white woman beside me at the bar leans over to say, no one makes better sushi than this place. She's moaning over her Philly roll. Oh, it's so good. I nod, smile, flip a slice of yellowtail with wobbly chopsticks, drop it in my shoyu, just as I'm about to offer the name of the izakaya across town with the heavenly maki. Her arm shoots out, lands a hand on my shoulder. I pull away, watch a sliver of shrimp pasted to her chin by a dot of wasabi quiver as she speaks. Where are my manners? I am so sorry. Of course, this can't be as good as what your mother makes. I lift my tonic, nurse it as if it were a wound, wish it were gin. What good would it do to explain that even when mom cooked, it was not Chinese food, that we ate fried bologna, not char siu? So much I could say to this woman who's conflated nations and histories into a single Far East. Instead, I say, my mother's dead. The woman doesn't speak. We pretend to eat in peace. And then this second poem is also an acrostic. And to get out of my head a little bit, I've been writing fairy tales from the point of view of like minor characters. And so this one, I reread Sleeping Beauty and had forgotten that the good fairy in that story, in her wisdom, I guess, to keep Sleeping Beauty from being terrified when she wakes up after 100 years, she puts all of the other people and animals in the palace to sleep for 100 years as well. So this is from the point of view of one of those people. And the acrostic in this is, I do not dream of labor, which if you haven't seen that in a TikTok somewhere, I would suggest putting in a search engine. It's worth checking out. So this is called Elsewhere in the Palace. Indeed, I slept the same as her. Well, not quite the same. Under the fairy's spell, my dreams made steady work of me, bundling herbs into a bouquet garni, slipping an onion from its skin, bringing the knife down again and again. In all that slumber, I took no rest, spent my century testing recipes, knocking back dough, pulling loaves from ovens. I knew when she woke, the bread would need to be pillowy soft on her tongue. The goose would need to be stuffed and trussed. But first I'd need to gather its fluffy down, pluck its feathers in handfuls, then one by one by one, to set aside for her royal bedding. Perhaps it was a blessing. In all those years, I never dreamed of my son, only ate when he was taken by fever, or his father who rode off before the sleep began. Surely age reaped him long ago, while in this castle, lambs and calves dozed with the ease of youth. Mares dreamed of fields and foals, the caress of the groom's brush. In that deep well of quiet, even the flies I used to shoo from peelings fell dormant, while I filled bowls with fruit, mulled them with spices, baked them into ornate pies. In that long twilight, I still ladled sauces, skimmed creams, seared and braised and roasted meats. I could not catch a moment's peace to mop the steam from my brow, to clean the stains from my apron, blood and flour speckling it like a clutch of quail's eggs. On the day we all woke, our faces creased with a lifetime of repose. They roused like my boy used to, ravenous from the rigors of sleep. They celebrated their good fortune. They looked to me to provide the feast. Thanks.
Thanks so much, JP. That was wonderful. And now I want to know how they look on the page. I'm like, you have links, please drop them. Thank you so much. Next up, we have CJ Wiggin. CJ was our fall WITS apprentice, and then they taught as a WITS writer in the spring in Charles's class at Woodburn. CJ Wiggin is a Jamaican-American writer and artist creating quiet and emotional stories about relationships, identity, dreams, nature, magic, and hair. Some of CJ's art can be found in Theories of Her, an experimental anthology, and soon on Twitter at Rofied Beats. CJ is currently working on a magical realism novella about the one worst thing in the world, which is a very intriguing tagline, CJ. A fun fact about CJ, they collect butterfly brooches, which is an excellent fact. And I would love to see some of them. Thanks, CJ.
Thank you, Joel. My voice is kind of hoarse today. I went to the park yesterday and was like screaming a lot, so bear with my like raspy voice. This is a segment from the novella that I'm working on, and it's a little confusing and like very like stream of consciousness, but I realized just feeling ready to share it today. So once upon a time, I know I already did this. I was born on earth and nobody loved me. It was already going, so I just picked up from where something else had left off, as if my life was something that could be stopped and started up again easily, like knitting, muscle memory, me time, something warm for Christmas, though it didn't turn out how I planned. I moved through it quickly this time, not interested in what I was making or leaving behind, aiming to finish this up ASAP so I could get on to the next one. There was no stopping to take notice of major living events, celebrations, triumphs, or Great Depressions. There was no getting connected, no eyes drifting lazily from moment to moment, because my eyes were always set forward. This time I didn't hold on to possessions, only took what I needed, and I slept as often as possible, so time slipped away like raindrops. I listened to others speaking, but I never responded or took it all in. I knew about music and writing, but I didn't listen to one song, not even the jingles playing in commercials on the radio. I sat through the winter in the dark. The sun would shine again, and I slept one endless night in a cave. When I woke up, that life was over. In this one, I have a family. There are 2 parents who love me and 2 younger versions of me who smell strange. This time I have a weird personality, and it's difficult for me to make friends my own age. But I don't notice and I don't care. Other adults tell my parents I'm special, and my parents tell me I'm special, and I think of it as a good thing. I believe in unicorns. I have a breathing problem, but I run around and pretend to be a fairy sometimes. I played with dolls until this year when I turned 15. Someone in my family is overprotective and still holds my hand when we cross the street, or at least one hand reaches out and drops between us just in case I decide I need it. I usually try to ignore the hand, pushing it away with my mind, but sometimes I do need it, sometimes I want it. I sit in the waiting area at the hospital clinic wondering about the other people there. We all have masks on. I'd never worn a mask like that before. It covers most of my face, my nose and mouth, and my cheeks. I don't think anyone would be able to recognize me, even if they were looking. No one would be looking anyway, but I have a common neutral haircut, easily mistaken for any boy or girl my height. And I'm just in a plain tan t-shirt and jeans and gray sneakers, nothing identifiable. Maybe my backpack with many keychains, but it's under my chair, pushed towards the wall in the darkness. There are 2 old people in the lobby too. They came in together, but now they're sitting with 2 yards of distance between them. There was a creepy little girl drawing with crayons in the corner next to a bunch of free to the public toys. I used to draw in that corner and play with the same toys and be creepy, but now I'm too old. I stare at the little girl until she starts to stare back, her giant blue eyes, saucers in the middle of a small doll face. There is a reoccurring twinge of jealousy that creeps in on me in moments like this. It's that feeling that makes me want to start rushing again, not notice anything again, stop making real connections, stop listening to music, stop speaking when spoken to, and yam. Someone is saying to me, yam, yam. These people named me Yammy, meaning darkness, as if I hadn't learned enough from the black sky last time. I look up and someone is handing me a small white paper bag. Here you go, someone says. I don't take it. but I pull the bag towards my face and peer inside. Another inhaler. Someone nods. You need to keep this on you this time. We can't afford to get you another one every 5 seconds. This is the overprotective person with the hand in between our bodies when we're crossing the street. This is the tallest person in the waiting room, the tallest nearly everywhere we go. We sometimes go to parks and lakes and places like that together, more when I was little. And this one would seem like a giant beside me. I used to feel as if my hand would be squashed between this person's index finger and pointer. It would get stuck right there. I used to notice that no one ever said anything to us while we walked around like that, with me terrified for my life. That is because the two of us resemble one another facially. We have similar eyes, noses, and lips, so other people use this as a symbol to represent safety, or at the very least, none of their business. I opened the back door to the car. It's a small silver car that fits 5 people, okay? The amount of people in this family. Please sit in the passenger seat, someone says to me. It's someone different from the overprotective person who came into the clinic. This person waits for us in the car whenever we go places. This person gets anxiety when we're surrounded by strangers. And this person doesn't go grocery shopping or to the mall or to beaches, schools, or amusement parks. This person only goes fishing alone, or sometimes we have father-son fishing trips, and we take one of the little versions of me too, the boy one. I want Yemi to sit in the back, the overprotective one says. I want Yemi to sit in the front, the anxious one replies. I want to ask him about the appointment. I want his opinion on it. I don't enjoy sitting in the passenger seat because I feel like I can't relax up there. I know if the car were to crash, I would be uncomfortable. What if my legs crunched up to my chest? What if I got a scar that crossed my face for the rest of my life and I had to use makeup to cover it? And there is more pressure to be a part of the conversation in the front seat, where the driver is always looking at you quickly between green lights. What do you want to do during the next couple of weeks of spring break? Last year we did crafts the whole entire time. We made a big drawing together as a family and submitted it to a competition where other families had submitted collaborative art pieces. We framed it and everything, and it sat on a table with sculptures and paintings and vases that looked like they'd been bought in a store, but had actually been created using the coiling method and then glazed. The art had been all created to a theme, and it was a church-related theme. Is there going to be another fundraiser art market this year? The overprotective person and I are on the same page. I don't know, the anxious one says. Did the kids like that anyway? Who, I ask, was I a kid now? You mean me? No, the anxious person laughs. I meant your brother and sister, the little kids. The person pats me on the shoulder. I wish the person had been talking about me, wanted to know if I'd like the project or the competition or the theme or the church. I want to tell the person about how scared I was when I realized it was a competition and that there were going to be vases there and that we were going to be judged. But they weren't talking about me. It's that feeling like it was all of that and still not worth anything. Makes me want to start rushing again and not noticing anything.
Thanks so much, CJ. That was amazing. Got very lost in it as it was happening. Thank you. Oh man, I'm so appreciative of all of you, and just to get to hear your incredible work. And I know that we center the students a lot at the readings and in the classroom, but it's really nice to just be able to celebrate you and just all of the creative work you're putting out into the world. It's incredible, and I'm in awe of all of you. So our final reader is our Director of Youth Programs, Emily Prado, who has led us through a really unusual year. And I'm very grateful to her for all of her leadership this year, while simultaneously putting out a book, which I will talk a little bit about. Emily Prado is a writer, community organizer, and the Director of Youth Programs at Literary Arts. She is a Blackburn Fellow at Randolph College and moonlights as DJ Mommy Miami with Noche Libre, the Latinx DJ collective she co-founded in 2017. Her debut essay collection, Funeral for Flocka, is forthcoming with future tense books on July 1st, and you can pre-order it now. I'll put the link in the chat. There's some parties coming up for it. Here's the link in the chat. And we have 2 fun facts about Emily, a bonus because she's our last reader. The first one is that when Emily was 13, she swam in a swimming pool in Hawaii with, of all rock legends, Papa Roach. It's a great fact. And this is a bonus fun fact directly in relation to JP's fact. For Emily's Zoom pandemic birthday, her partner organized Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which is a great pun. Emily?
Thank you for the warm introduction. And before I get started, just I want to say thank you all so much for this year. And it's just been wild, and it's been really wonderful to have you all here. I mean, virtually still, and just thanks for everything that you've done for WITS and the students that we've worked with, and just for each other. It's also been really amazing to see some of you all collaborate with each other and just get to interact too at the professional development meetings. And thank you to the wonderful teachers who are here. I'm just looking forward to what's next. And I'm glad that so many of you who are here will be with us next year too. So thank you for that too. That was a really big relief. I was like, yay. So thanks. And I will read from my book. I'm going to read an excerpt. Also, I'll show you, I got the paperbacks yesterday or a couple days ago, so they're here, which is exciting. And I hope to see you all at some of those events if you're interested. If not, that's okay too, and I'll see you all around. Thank you. So this is an excerpt, a shortened version of a chapter called La Llorona. All right. In the middle of Mama Coyo's house in Aguililla, Michoacan, there is a tree with thick beige roots buried deep in the ground. Papa Nana lives there too, but I have become accustomed to referring to it as her house on account of my own single mother, the single mothers of all my friends, and the true matriarchs running households on both sides of my family. The tree in the middle of the house is majestic and several feet taller than the roof. Its branches sprout high up through a wide, squared opening hole in the roof, and it curls over the kitchen above the cemented pilas holding this week's clean water. The tile that surrounds the tree, the walkway between the kitchen and the bathroom, has tilted uphill under its roots. It grew right before our eyes, even though no one noticed. If you're not careful and you walk too heavy, you can kick a square tile loose. As kids, we'd climb up the arms of the tree. We'd run to the tree for safety, for protection from Mama Coyo's viciously nipping macaw. One time, my sister Daniela wasn't careful enough and tumbled down so many feet onto her back. She cried, but she did not die. Growing up, I was sure it was because God had been watching. At night, the stars glimmer and the black shadows of fleeting birds and bats dash overhead. The tree at the heart of the house continues to grow and happily laps up the rainwater when it pours. Unlike me, the tree is not afraid, not of the water or the lightning or the thunder that shuts off our electricity and shakes the other two-toned houses around. When I was still little in every way, my tiny body would shake as I cried and covered my ears, holding my breath when the flashes brought light and the dread of a mounting roar. I was taught to be less scared because Mama Coyo told me in Spanish that God had built an invisible barrier around this pueblo to protect it from being burned by lightning strikes. She'd tell me how this pueblo had existed for thousands of years, and not once did it get burned to a crisp or crack under a bolt of ice-white relampago. This house is where my papi grew up when he was blonde and blue-eyed for the first 2 years of his life. This house is where my papi continued to grow when his hair turned black and his skin turned brown, and he lost 2 of his 9 siblings, one from a gunshot and another from a scorpion sting inside her baby cuna. This is the house where I spent my summers in, growing up and into my morena skin, and learn for the first time what it feels like to blend in. In Mexico, I learned the nicknames for every kid on the block and wore my own name proudly. My papi must have called me his flaca the first time he laid his eyes on me, a slippery and noodly 22 inches long, 6 pounds light, Skinny girl doesn't have the same ring to it like so many other words that lose their poesy by way of translation, but his skinny girl I was. In Aguilia, I was also flaca, and there was the loud and wildly goofy Chucho, the rude-ass gold chain-wearing bully was called Carlingas. Across the way were Ticho y Toco, the older neighborhood sisters turned lifetime family friends, one of which I witnessed pretending to be my aunt when my family helped her cross the border as I sat in the back row of our Suburban. A few blocks further out lived Canelo, the cinnamon-haired, amply freckled Moreno, plus my little brothers Flaco, Hector, and Gordo, Hector, were also named on account of their weight. My papi was given the name of Chayote when he emerged from the womb with hair eternally reaching high up into the sky. His strands were the prickly spikes of the chayote vegetable, known in English less beautifully as the Merleton squash. My mom's nickname is Chatia, a nickname passed down from her own mother's nickname of Chata and one given to people blessed with allegedly funny noses. My tia Delfina was always known as Concha, and when she died, my family wrote it on her funeral invitation with pride. Having witnessed nicknames lasting lifetimes and up into and beyond the grave, I did not know names could have an expiration date until my own had come and gone. I do not know when my own flaca was annulled, but maybe it was right after my 21st birthday. There was no coroner or grim reaper who appeared after the scale passed a certain number, nor a memo sent from my father alerting me that my nickname was dead. What is the name for a grief that creeps in after losing something mixed with the backdated guilt and shame of not really noticing? What is the nickname for a person who no longer embodies their name? What happens to a person who has become unrecognizably them? What do we call a tree that's been severed from its roots? A person who has been robbed of their identity. Men in my family have come up to tell me I am no longer flaca. Women in my family have told me this too. When I told my mom a mustache man, some distant relative, had approached me at my Papa Nano's birthday party and said he remembered when I used to be spaghetti, my mommy laughed. Spaghetti, she cackled. Spaghetti, she repeated the punchline several times back. But when my mom stops laughing, she tells anyone who will listen that she used to be spaghetti too. I am mad at the mustache man, but I'm even more mad at the mustache man for the sake of my mommy. Maybe I should have realized my provisional nickname was a challenge, the two syllables, a double-edged sword yielding adoration and taunting, daring me to live up to my name, to govern the food that touches my lips when I can no longer eat without consequence. Flaca, a hissing reminder that I should hunch to make myself seem smaller, and that giving up on counting calories meant giving up on who I was born to be. Flaca is not a name. Flaca is a name to be earned and not a name for the weak. Flaca is not even given to girls or women who are average or who teeter on the other side of BMI. Flaca is not to be given to girls who look like me. This house in Aguilia has witnessed and cycled right alongside my own family's births, growths, and deaths. I have not been back to this house in at least 12 years, but I have learned that it, like me, looks different. My cousins tell me Mama Coyo has a new macaw, still as vicious as the last. Mama Coyo has retired from making cheese. The cows Papa Nano once herded back into the small rancho next to the house have been replaced by parked cars, and they've closed up the opening in the roof, chopping down the once sprawling tree. Maybe this is what change looks like. All I can think of is what's gone. This house is a casket where I will lay Flaca and Las Vacas and Mama Coyo's first macaw to rest. At the funeral, I will dig a hole into the foundation and drop each letter of my old name, one by one. I will stir the dirt with the remains of tree roots and say a prayer for us all, for old time's sake. At the funeral, there will be no procession or eulogy, no explanations necessary, and for once, I won't be wearing all black. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. So good. Thank you. You all can read it in a real book. It's coming out. I'm going to put the link in the chat one more time just for fun. And thank you all for coming out tonight. It was just such a pleasure to hear you all read and to see your faces. And I hope that you all have a wonderful summer. And I hope to see you all soon in person. Thank you for an incredible year. In spite of these circumstances, we're really grateful to you. So have a great evening and a great summer. Oh, and if we could unmute and do one cheer, I love to do that at the end. Everybody unmute and give a big round of applause for all of our readers tonight.
Woo!
Ah!
Yay! Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Jules, I'll stay on with you for a second as we say goodbye to everyone. Thank you all so much. Hope you have a wonderful summer, and we'll see you around and also next year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye. 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 Bye, Ed. Ed, are you teaching with us next year?
I believe so. Yeah, I'd like to. Yeah.
Okay, I sent you an email. Okay, I'll just say that you're teaching next year, and I'll be in touch again soon then.
Bye.
How are you feeling? Oh,
Good. I'm getting gooder. I do cardio rehab 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 9:15, 10:15. Put on a treadmill and step thing. Take my blood pressure twice. So working pretty good. I do it till August.
good.
Weight too, and eating better. Eating
Yeah.
stuff. I think
Nice.
I'm turning into a cow.
Well, awesome. I'm really glad to know that you're doing okay and that you're doing better, hopefully. And yeah, it's so nice to see you and hear you read so many pieces today.
Thank you. Enjoyed that. Yeah. Okay. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just wanted to read the chat.
Yeah, totally.
before
It's
we got up.
cute. Yeah.
I just saw them all coming in and I was like, ah,
That was awesome. I'm so stoked to hear you read more.
thanks. I don't know how long that was.
No, it was great. People were in
I
it.
tried, that's even cut down because that's a little bit longer than that, but I like to read it because it's the, like title piece kind of.
Yeah, it feels like it's like it. Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm just reading them. You can stop recording.
Oh, I will.